This is VIN 3062. It is a 2020 flare yellow with LA20 interior, so it's yellow with black interior. The flare yellows, there's only 11 of them that were produced for the US, for North American market. There's only 17 that were produced worldwide, 5 in Japan, 11 in the US, and 1 was a pre-production car, which is either crushed or belongs to Lexus or something like that, but there's no other info on that. That pre-production car has red interior, it's the only car. But focus here is on the flare yellow. 2019, there were 6, 2020, there were 5. So we're talking about 1 of 5. Of those 5, 1 had black and white interior, that's the Unicorn, it's in California. The other 4 are yellow with black interior. So this is 1 of 4 that exists in this combination. Very, very rare, very special car. The rarest color ever offered on the GSF. And these cars, because of the color, because of the rarity, they fetch quite a price premium in the area of $10,000 to $15,000 in today's market, just because they're flare yellow, factory flare yellow. Now there are people that have wrapped their cars flare yellow. There is one overseas that someone has actually taken a gray car and painted it, stripped it down, bare chassis, no wiring harness, no nothing, and made it into a flare yellow GSF. But we're not talking about that. The cool thing about so few of these cars existing is they're very easy to identify if you see them, because of where you see them or if they have gray mirrors or black mirrors. The giveaway 2019s had gray mirrors and B-pillars, here and here. 2020s, they were black, like the piano black, gloss black. So if you see a flare yellow with black mirrors and black pillars, pretty good chance it's a 2020 unless somebody has changed it from their 2019. The downside to the flare yellows is almost all of them were press cars or track cars. They were Lexus driving school cars. And Lexus had one 2020 Lexus driving school car. It was car number 10, frequently seen online in videos and things like that. This is that car. So this was Lexus driving school car number 10. It was originally delivered to Lexus, and it was sold as a manufacturer vehicle to its first owner. Well, actually Lexus on this one, they actually titled it. It wasn't, some of the other ones, they actually will just hold and never title, and then the next person to buy it will be the first owner on paper, even though you're the second owner. That wasn't the case with this one. This one was titled under Lexus in California, and the owner was noted in Plano, Texas, which of course is where Toyota headquarters is. Torrance, California is where it used to be, and so everything kind of matches up there. But the very first entry on the service history on this says, car is to be used in track environment, and they basically prep it and do things like that. But it's pretty apparent that this car was a track car for the beginning of its life. Fortunately, it wasn't one that was tracked for like 15 or 20,000 miles. It looks like it was used for about 5,000 miles as a track car. So I'll get into the service history here in a minute, but I'm going to tell you more in detail about what I know about this car from my end, and then we'll speculate on prices and things like that here in a minute. So again, because this was a track car, I already know where this one is. There is a 2020 that's the Unicorn I talked about in California. It's the only one that has the black and white interior, and it's in private hands. It's a one owner, no accidents, low mile car. Again, that is the Unicorn of these cars. And if you see this, hit me up, we'll talk. So we have this car, we have the Unicorn car. There's one in private hands in New York, and then there's 2 others. They were press cars. So 3 of the 5 of these cars for 2020 had something to do with press cars, track cars. The 2 that you see all over YouTube and all over the internet, one has Washington State plates, one has Colorado plates. The one in Colorado, that was the one that was reviewed by the Fast Lane Car. The Top Gear USA Stig drove it. It's in a lot of the YouTube reviewers. The one with Washington plates, it is one that was all over YouTube and reviewers and things like that. It was just, they attracted a lot of attention because they were yellow, and so therefore a lot of people used them. And they got passed around a lot. They were driven hard, lots of butts in the seats, things like that. But So that's where all of the 52020s are. So this one's in Arkansas. It is at Copart, and it has some pretty severe hail damage, and it's on the Carfax, but the owner had a loan on it, had a lien, and I'm assuming the insurance paid the owner, and so now it's in the property of, or it's in the possession of the insurance company, which it's now at Copart. However, it's still an unknown title status as whether or not it's going to be a salvage title or if it's a clean title just with noted hail damage. Now, if you look at these pictures pretty carefully, you can tell obviously it has damage on the hood, on the fenders, on the roof, the trunk lid, things like that. But it looks like one of the hailstones got one of the headlights, so that's $3,500. The hard to repair panels on this car are the roof and the A pillars and the C pillars. That's where a lot of money is going to have to be spent. I'm sure the sunroof is smashed. The photos don't show that. I don't see any glass on the interior. Maybe they just cleaned it very well before they had Copart do it. Copart does offer a service where they clean it up before they take pictures, so that could have been what happened as well. But if you add it all up, you know, this car before the damage was probably upper 60s or lower $70,000 car. Copart shows it as a $56,000 car when repaired, and I think that the $70,000 is probably where it was. But if you had to take 2/3 of that to total it, I don't think you're there. You know, does this car have $30,000 worth of damage? I don't see it. If you replace the hood, replace the trunk lid, of course, and you have to properly paint and install and everything, replace the headlight, the sunroof, I don't see $30,000 worth of damage. So I think, my opinion, I think that this will end up with a clean title. I kind of hope it does for everybody's sake. If it ends up with a salvage title, it's unfortunate because that's kind of the way a couple of the other 2019s ended up. 2 of the 6 2019s already have a salvage title. One of them is completely gone. One of them is rebuilt, low miles, and he's kind of all over the forums, and I've talked to him. He's a cool guy. Okay, so I think I've rambled on enough about the history of it. So let's jump into the service history. In February of 2020, 3,000 miles on it, used in a track environment. It had a crease in the right rear bumper, and it doesn't say what came of that. I don't know if it was repaired, if the bumper was replaced. I don't know. It didn't give me much to go on. June of 2020, 5,000 miles, there was a bubble in the tire, replaced and refinished one wheel, probably the same wheel. November of 2020, the check engine light was on with 5,000 miles, had some kind of blown fuse. It didn't say what it was, but it said it had limited power, and so they replaced it, and it didn't have any issue. So in April of 2022, with 16,000 miles, the check engine light was on yet again. They did brakes and alignment at the same time. Check engine light was just a loose gas cap. It had an evap code or something like that, so nothing to look into there. A month later, May of 2022, 2016, they reported that the ducts in the front bumper were loose. Parking sensors were having issues. So it's not uncommon to see these cars with these vents that are underneath the headlights. It's not uncommon to see those where they kind of work themselves loose. They weren't like great fitting to begin with, and that issue was never addressed as time went on. They never updated that part. One of mine is kind of like that. If you press on it, it will come in, and I do have replacements for it for that very reason, but I later realized it's the same exact part. They didn't update it, so it's going to do the same thing. And then April of 2023, 22,000 miles, the check engine light is on yet again, but it has an unknown reason, and they don't say what they did to resolve it. I hope it's just like a loose gas cap on or something again, but they didn't go into detail as to what the issue was. And that's the last service at Lexus. It looks like the owner in Arkansas, they took it to Houston for service. So from Fayetteville, Arkansas to Houston, Texas, that's quite a drive, but that seems to be where it went for service. Sales history on this car, so when it was new, it was around $90,000, but it was delivered to Lexus in the beginning. So the first owner after Lexus, August of 2020, it was for sale for $69,000 with 5,000 miles in Texas. They dropped it to $68,000 2 days later. Kind of weird. Maybe they just needed to adjust the price on it. September of 2022, $67,000. So in 2 years, it only dropped $2,000. 3 months later, November of 2022, it's still for sale for the same price, $67,000. And then it ended up with a new owner in Arkansas who registered it at the beginning of 2023. Carfax, Epic VIN, and AutoCheck. So Carfax shows it as a 4-owner, moderate to severe damage accident reported on May 22nd, 2025. It doesn't have anything past that. That's the last entry because obviously it's sitting at Copart. We don't know what's going to happen, if it's going to be a salvage title, whatever. Epic VIN shows it as a 3-owner, no accident car, and AutoCheck shows it as a 4-owner, 1 accident car. So I think it's safe to assume this is a 4-owner with 1 accident, or well, 1 damage claim, I suppose. It's not necessarily an accident, but on the rear bumper in the service history, it did note that the right rear bumper had some damage, had a crease. So it obviously impacted something. The big one on this one is going to be the value. We all know the amount of interest that this car has garnered. There's a lot of people watching it at Copart. It's going to fetch some big bucks, and hopefully not more than retail, plus fixing it. Because this car is so special and because it has garnered so much interest, $40,000 plus fees, that's going to be my guess as to where this is going to end up. And I think that if it ends up with a salvage title, it's going to be still pretty easy to sell because of how special it is. It won't be $70,000+, but if this car remains with a clean title but just has hail damage history, instead of the others fetching the $70,000 to $80,000, it may be in the 60s still. So there's a lot that's up in the air with this car as far as the value goes. And I guess it just remains to be seen what the title status is going to be and what it sells for at Copart. But there is somebody else that's going to be watching it and maybe a bidder on it too. But there's a lot of people that have interest in this, and I get emails about cars. They want requests on hey, what do you know about this car? What do you know about that car? But I get constant emails about this car, about what I know on it, and because they are so special. So this car is the rarest color of an already very rare car, and so that's what makes it very special. That's why there's going to be so much attention on it. So if you guys are going to be bidding on it, let me know in the comments. Please don't outbid me. But yeah, it's a special car, and there's going to be a lot of interest in it. So if you're seeing this in the future, or if you bought this car and you weren't me, then let me know in the comments. I'd love to talk to you and chat with you and see what else was involved in the repair of this car. So thanks again for watching, guys. Again, this is VIN 3062 2020 Flare Yellow GSF. We'll see you soon.